Where is India today, right? Where is the country positioned? If you cut through the hype, right? Because the hype is of different sorts. The hype is there's a political edge to the hype. If you cut through that, India today is very, very similarly placed to where America was roughly a century ago, right? So just to sort of put this in context, why am I saying this? In the 1860s, America went through civil war, right? A famous civil war. They killed each other. 1870s, they stopped fighting. 1880s, right? Incredibly, they built their railroad system, right? By 1884, they linked the East and the West Coast together. 1900, a man called Alexander Graham Bell invented the phone. So by 1900, these guys had telegraph, right? That also is quite remarkable. 1900, they had telegraph across the country. 1908, the world's first mass-produced motor car came along, the Model T Ford. And naturally, therefore, with a lag of around 20 years, they highwayed the whole country. Or by 1930s, they built their national highway network, right? So those 50 years, roughly 1880 to 1930, they joined up America. They networked the country. And by networking America, they changed the complexion of the economy. They changed the complexion of the country. Specifically, chota companies, local companies got wiped out. And national giants were born, right? You consolidated the economy. Not just these brands. If you go back and check, leaving aside the technology brands, pretty much everything that we know America and associate America with was born in that, was created in that 50 saal, 50 years ka era, right? So just to sort of take the example which is easiest to understand, right? Were Americans having condiments and ketchups in the 1870s? Absolutely, they were having it, right? But much like India today, where say Achar in India is a local industry, right? There is no national achar player. There is no national agarbatti player, right? There is no national mithai player, incredible as it sounds. These are very local industries in our country. America, achar or ketchup was a local industry in the 1870s. The most efficient ketchup manufacturer was Mr. Heinz. And therefore, as the countries started joining up, right? And this is important to understand. It's actually quite intuitive. It's quite important to understand. As the country started getting joined up, better roads, cars, telegraph, etc., Mr. Heinz said, this is a lot of fun. This is so much fun. He would just go to the adjacent area where he dominated. These guys come from Pittsburgh. The Heinz family still, I think, is based in Pittsburgh. They went to the adjacent area and said, look, Mr. Adjacent Area Ketchup Manufacturer, you have a choice in life. You either sell that company to me or I destroy you financially because I am more cash. I'm generating more cash. I have a more powerful business, right? And therefore, by 1930, one company dominated ketchup, and it was Heinz. And say ditto for breakfast cereal and Kellogg's. And if you go back and check, chewing gum and Wrigley's is very similar, right? That fundamentally is what economic development is about. A lot of people think economic development is capex and GDP growth and so on. वो सब outcome है. Fundamentally, economic development is when you join up a country, when you join up a nation, the efficient player ends up spreading his or her wings, and the efficient player takes over the whole sector, right? And that's what my colleagues and I came to India to do, and thankfully, it's working to plan, right? India has been transformed over the past decade. I'm not making some political statement. It's a straightforward point of view. The first and obvious piece for those of us who drove through the metro construction this morning, most of us drove through the metro construction this morning. In the last 10 years, we have built twice as much infrastructure as we did in the first 60 years of independence, right? It's a straightforward point. If you double the highway network, you halve commute times, you halve journey times. If a truck travels twice as fast and without any GST blockages, the working capital cycle, the number of days the goods are stuck inside the truck reduces. That's more cash flow, right? So first, an obvious layer of development is you've doubled the physical infrastructure, and this is not going to stop, regardless of which government is running which state. Expediting physical infrastructure has become a big priority for our polity. Second is, what we have done in terms of tax reform is quite remarkable, right? I studied economic history at the LSE. I have never seen a country change its tax system at this speed and ironically without that much halla gulla, right? So everybody knows about GST. 2017 when GST unified the indirect tax system, right? Till GST came along, remember, till GST came along, each state was a little market by itself and you integrated the tax system. Then in September 2019, I thought a remarkable change took place. I thought it was a far more important change than people understood it. The finance minister cut the corporate tax rate from 35 to 25, right? It's a big change, right? Then in the recent budget, I thought an even bigger change took place. where the default mode of tax filing for most people became the simplified system, right? And this is actually very interesting. Most important changes in India don't actually get commented upon. They fly under the radar, and it's the nature of Indian life, both in business and in policy. The important stuff will not be hyped up, right? And that's where you and I need to switch our radar on. The important stuff will not be in the headlines. The important stuff will be in the detail, and therefore, in a way, investing in India, if you want to do it our way, is about switching your mind on to understand the subtext, the detail, rather than the big picture. The big picture usually that you'll get on the front pages of papers will be a smoke screen. The real stuff will be happening in the background. The real stuff in the budget was effectively she nudged the country towards a very different income tax system, and I think a better income tax system. The old system of ye exemption, wo exemption is gradually going to become history, right? Let's move forward to banking reform, right? This has been epic, right? Again, it's flown under the radar. Basically, 8 or 9 years ago, our banking system was effectively broken, right? Around 200 to 300 billion dollars had been taken out by power and infra promoters. That money had disappeared. It had broken the banking system. Small businesses found it very difficult to get loans in 2015, 16, I remember. At great cost, your taxpayers' money, our shareholders, our money as shareholders, great cost, the banking system has been repaired. Serious legislative reform has happened in the background. The Insolvency and Bankruptcy Act is a big deal. It's not a joke. It's not perfect, but it's working reasonably well. And in that regard, the fact that courtesy Jan Dhan, the number of bank accounts have trebled in the country is also a big deal, right? On the one hand, the banks have more capital to lend. The borrower fears insolvency because of the Insolvency Act. On the other hand, deposit taking also has to increase, and for that, trebling the number of bank accounts played a big role. And then that links directly to the India stack. And the link between banking and the India stack is UPI, right? So 14 years ago, Nandan Nilekani quit his job at Infosys to set up Aadhaar, right? He joined the government, set up Aadhaar. By 2015, we had 1.5 billion Indians on Aadhaar. By 2015, those Aadhaar IDs had got mapped to bank accounts. By 2016, Reliance announced Jio and cheap broadband. UPI was announced on the back of that. NPCI came and announced UPI. Today, 52% of national income goes through UPI. It's an unbelievable stat. 52% of national income goes through a peer-to-peer payment system, which is what's effectively 4 years old. Right? Through COVID, it's gained traction. Every month, we are doing 7 billion. We as a group are doing 7 billion peer-to-peer transactions. There is nothing like it anywhere else in the world, right? This is a game changer at many levels. At some other session, we can get into the details of it. But the crux of what I'm driving at is, both from a physical perspective, physical infrastructure, and from a financial and tax perspective, you have slammed the country together. Most small businesses that I meet now think national. Small businesses no longer think that I'm operating in Mahalakshmi, so my client base is Mahalakshmi. That I'm operating in Bombay, my client base is Bombay. And because small businesses think national, and because obviously larger businesses are going national, it's changing the nature of competitive advantage in India. The way you and I need to think about competitive advantage is fundamentally changed.